Hello guys, the intro didn't work again. Absolutely love it when the technical problems happen, but we are here, Spurs related, in the building. Myself and Jack are joined, as you can see, alongside the Euro expert, Alex himself. This guy hasn't been on the channel for, I think, since 2 windows ago now, but we thought, you know what, who better to explain these new signings, Danjuma and hopefully Pedro Porro, if Spurs don't Spurs the signing in the coming days. But before I talk even more, Alex, thanks so much for joining us, mate. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. If anyone was curious why, usually I do not wear a hat in these videos, but my hair is so shambolic today after doing lots of running that I thought I can't ruin the stream by showing it. So you have to deal with a Zerk LDN London shirt. Well, I'm very happy to be on.
No worries. Yeah, thanks for coming on, definitely. And no, hat or no hat, we've got the brains in the building, so it's all good. And Jack, how you doing as well, mate?
I'm doing well, mate. Buzzing for this one. Can't wait to find out a bit of tactical insight. James, we like to think we know a bit how good Pedro Porro and Danjuma are, but we've got the right man on to tell us all about whether they can challenge our players and what they're going to bring to this Tottenham side.
Absolutely love it. We've already got 20 in the building. I'm sure that will grow with expectations all around these 2 new players. A bit of excitement as well, especially Pedro Porro for me. He's the one that I really want to know more about. And Alex is going to take us through that very shortly. We'll quickly welcome some people in the chat and then we'll get straight into things. Got Bobby K, first comment. For some reason, it's not letting me click on anything, so might be a few technical glitches here and there. Hence, I was just staring at the screen for 10 seconds when we joined. Was hoping the intro played, but just wasn't playing ball. Who else? We've got Sukils in the chat. We've got Felix. We've got Archie. We've got MT. Sciatica is bad. Yes, you're right, Michael. You are right. But listen, first of all, Alex, how is it going in terms of the transfer window? You've got content going up on your TikTok, your YouTube. It looks like it's doing pretty well. Thoughts on everything, how it's going?
Yeah, it's been going quite nice. I tell you what, Spurs fans are maybe my favourite during the transfer window because I think what happens with Tottenham is that you get linked to about 50 million players and you tend to sign like maybe 2 of them, and it's always in the final week of the window, besides the summer where you got everything done early. And by that point, Spurs fans are so angry if Daniel leaves that you just get more and more craving for any signing. And at this point, you could sign Titus Bramble out of retirement. And the fans will still go absolutely mental and love the videos for it. So really, I love it. I love the transfer window, and I love Spurs at this point. Yeah.
What you love about Spurs fans is we're delusional. We'll pretend this player is going to be the next big thing, and he's actually very average. Let's be honest. Like Danjuma, I'm trying to get hyped about, but I just can't get hyped about it right now. And hopefully,
James, the thing is, Danjuma, in past windows, we've been signing people like Jedson Fernandez, and we've been so excited. We're like, oh my word, one video on YouTube, and we're thinking this man's going to be the key to our new midfield. And then roll on 6 months, and we're like, Levy, what are you doing? What's our scouting network? We need to hire Alex. But today we'll find out, is Danjuma and Porro the real deal? And I'm sure the fans are excited to hear what you got to say as well, Alex.
Yeah, I hope so. I think I've got some pretty interesting stuff, especially with Pedro Porro, because I think he is someone a little less known because he's coming out of Portugal. But he's to THFC. I think I'd be very confident about the signing.
Oh, here we go. So we've started on Pedro Porro, Alex. I feel like this is the one we start on. Shall I play your little video on him, and then we can start talking about potential tactics and anything else that isn't covered in this great video?
Oh, absolutely. Let's go straight into the video.
Have a look. Pedro Porro first up. Let's see what we're.
Spurs are in talks to sign Pedro Porro, and I can't think of a better fix for that right wing back role. Here's why. Porro is a 23-year-old Spanish defender who plays for Sporting, and he's got history in the Premier League. Porro was brought to Girona only a couple of months after the City Football Group acquired the team. After he topped the team for assists in 18-19, Manchester City actually purchased him. He didn't make an impact in the first team though, but was loaned and then sold to Sporting, and he's been electric since. I also reached out to my friend Nathan Motz, who is a Portuguese football expert and an author, and he called Porro an incessant nuisance, something I really liked and really highlighted his playmaking and creative abilities. Porro can drop into a back three in possession, which may seem profiled more as a defender than a midfielder, but he is fantastic in the final third. As seen by his heat map, he is very eager to get into the box, and he usually starts quite high and wide when allowed to, and then takes someone on 1v1. Once he's near the box, he can cross in, and he usually does this with lofted crosses, but I have seen him go to the byline and try cutbacks as well. That can be seen in the stats too. In fact, only Nuno Santos, also of Sporting last season, completed more crosses into the penalty box per 90 than Porro in the league. What we haven't mentioned so far is his defensive work. While strictly in tackles attempted versus completed, Porro doesn't look too bad. I actually think he's pretty decent in the 1v1. He could still improve. There's times where he fails to track the player he's meant to be marking, particularly when he's getting overwhelmed 2v1. And also Porro, I remember last season he did have a clumsy moment in him. He gave away a penalty against Famalicão with a pretty panicked tackle. Still, he's really young, you should expect these things. I also think he could have more than his 18 goals and assists in Primera since he joined Sporting. I often see him get into the right position in the final third in the penalty box, and he just misses his chance. However, since he can play right wing back and he drops into a right back when Sporting tend to defend, I think he makes a really attractive buy for any club across Europe. And yes, that does include Tottenham Hotspur.
There we go. Yes, that does include Tottenham Hotspur, as attractive it is. Firstly, what a great video. And secondly, the one that stood out on all the stats for me was his crossing, because we are really struggling with crosses. Left wing back, we've got Perisic, puts in a good cross, but right wing back is really where we're struggling.
What do you mean? Emerson's fantastic, isn't he?
Alex, don't even get me started on this guy tonight. But Jack, what was the main point for you that stuck out in the video in terms of, for me, obviously goals and assists as well, a big factor we're maybe lacking in such an important position in a five at the back?
Yeah, so I really like the quote by your friend, the incessant nuisance. I love that, and I think I want to know about Pedro Porro. Why do you believe he's the man that's going to fix Tottenham's right wing back issues? And you were saying, I was reading your tweets earlier, and you didn't see it happening. You didn't think that Tottenham would be able to draw in Pedro Porro, but it looks like we're going to get that over the line. How big of a signing is this for Tottenham? And do you believe this could really push Tottenham maybe into winning an FA Cup trophy this year? Hopefully a top 4 place.
Yeah, the biggest fundamental reason why I think he's such a big signing for Spurs, if it goes through, is that he's completely different to anything you've got at right wing back. And I think really that you've had at right wing back in as long as I can remember. I mean, you guys will know much more than me about the Spurs players, of course, but in terms of Serge Aurier to Kieran Trippier to Emerson to Doherty, like all of these players always strike me as, look, they tend to be better from deeper areas. They're not the most aggressive, will we say. They're not the most athletically gifted, I think that's fair to say, even in their primes, not saying they're slow or anything, but Porro is someone that's very aggressive going forward, a very good presser, Sporting under the coach Ruben Amorim, who is a candidate that some people would love to take over Conte when he eventually leaves, or whether he soon leaves. That's another whole debate. Amorim has always employed like a really high pressing system, which I think is the way that Spurs probably wanted to go in, a bit like how Pochettino had it. And Porro's been a key part of that. I mean, you said you like the quote from my friend Nathan Motts. What I cut out of that video actually was something he sent me after, because it didn't come from him. It came from a friend of his who's a Sporting supporter. And that supporter said that Porro is Sporting's best player. He went even further in his praise and said if they lost him this mid-season, it'd be devastating for them. He brought up a couple of negatives that we can get into, but there's a real cry for Porro to not go anywhere anytime soon, but it looks like it's probably quite likely.
That's the thing. That's what I was going to ask you. How does he rank in compared to Sporting's other players? Because they've had a fantastic season, especially in the Champions League as well, beating Spurs at their stadium. And I was just wondering, Pedro Porro, he comes from the Portuguese league, and how would you compare him to maybe people like Denzel Dumfries that we've been linked to in the past? And I'm sure you've mentioned like Malo Gusto from Lyon. Would you say he fits a right wing back profile better than these players, or do you think they're all quite similar in stature?
Dumfries. Okay, let's use Dumfries as a comparison. I feel like in the World Cup, everyone sees Denzel Dumfries, right? Probably the most casual Spurs fan. I've got one at my work. He's a boss of mine. Hopefully he doesn't watch this. And he's a dedicated Tottenham fan. But I think he'd probably hear Denzel Dumfries and go, wow, what a play. He was fantastic in the World Cup. Where when he left for Inter, right, from PSV. There was PSV's fans saying, you know, we finally scammed someone into buying this player, because if we're putting him next to Porro, Dumfries, sure, physically, athletically gifted, very good in the opposition box, getting on the end of crosses, like good positioning. Technically, like woeful, absolutely woeful. Whereas Porro is superb in the dribble, going 1v1 with players, and particularly in his crossing. I think that is, you know, James mentioned as well, this is the biggest asset coming into Spurs, where you've got players, you know, I have a couple of Spurs friends that I remember checking in with about Emerson, and they're usually very reserved, and one of them just got almost broke down. It was like, Emerson cannot cross a football. Porro can not only get the ball past the first man, which I'm sure will be like, you know, seeing Jesus Christ on the pitch for Tottenham fans, but also he has a nice range of crosses. I mentioned in the video, he's good at hitting them in early from deep areas, but he's more than happy to go to the byline and try cutbacks as well. And he's got that physicality and technical ability to get past players. And to tie it all the way back to your question about, you know, how important is he to Sporting? It also comes down to tactical reasons, right? Sporting operate a 3-4-3 system. He plays at right wing back, but if the ball's on the left-hand side, it's not uncommon to see him drop into a back three if needed. But he'll also push really, really high like a right winger. He can be their most advanced player, but also one of their more deep players. And that's because of his range of passing and also, you know, the attributes we've already spoken about. So he's going to be a very hard player to replace. And this isn't just coming from, you know, the Portuguese league. This is what I mentioned in the video. This is what lots of people have seen. You know, he was purchased by Manchester City for a reason. It's because they saw, you know, a Pep Guardiola instincts in him. And I think the only reason he isn't at the club right now is just because he found such a, you know, a comfortable home in Portugal.
Well, that was my question, Alex, around, obviously he used to play for Manchester City. It didn't really work, but is it just because of the Man City depth and quality that he didn't really get too much of a shot? Or is it more to do with the fact that, like, should we be panicking that it didn't work out at Man City? Why will it work out at Spurs in the Premier League?
Not at all. City, I believe they inserted a buyback clause actually into his contract, which is why the price is what it is. I think their buyback clause was about 40 million euros. Porro might have signed a new contract actually since, but you know they're quite keen on him. I think the only reason he didn't stay, and this is just kind of going from the outside, I couldn't find too much on this, but I think the main reason he didn't stay is because, you know, it wasn't long after João Cancelo was brought to Manchester City, and Kyle Walker hasn't really dropped off. So you look at those two, and you got to remember at this point, Cancelo was brought in as a right back, not a left back. The left back we know him today. That's, you know, a big wall of depth in his way. And he'd gone on loan to Sporting. They were just so keen to keep him and push the move through. It wasn't like he was loaned to, I don't know, Burnley, and City didn't really want him, and Burnley wanted people to come in. Like, Sporting are a huge club, and they were going in a very positive direction. I think they won the league in the season after he was made permanent, I believe. So I really wouldn't have any, worries over that decision.
Okay. Alex, one more question from Felix saying, could Chelsea hijack actually happen, or is it just speculation? Are we going to see Willian V2? Because I've seen a bit about this, but I mean, I think I'd probably cry if this happened, to be honest, at this point.
I don't think so. So Chelsea at the moment, people may have seen they're chasing a Lyon right back called Malo Gusto. And I mean, if there was a negative to put into this Porro move, we should talk about his negatives after as well. If there was one negative to put in this move, is the fact you're not signing Malo Gusto. But that's because Gusto, if you've not heard too much about him, he's an 18-year-old French right back for Lyon. He plays a right wing back and a right back, and he's already one of their most crucial players. And I've watched him nearly week in and week out for the past year. He's absolutely tremendous. He's going to be, if he keeps on the track he is, he'll be one of the best right backs in the world, or the best fullbacks in the world. Absolutely exceptional. Porro could well end up being one of those players, but the age Gusto is performing at is ridiculous, like especially in attacking sense. Now, Chelsea are really keen on him, especially since Gusto's contract runs out in 2024. But I'm not 100% sure they'll be able to pry him away from Lyon mid-season. And if Chelsea are impatient, then maybe there's a chance, this is the theory, that they'll go to Pedro Porro. However, Porro is quite a bit older. I think he's 22, 23 years old, right? The reason he wants to go to Sporting as well is to get the game time. I don't think he'd go to Chelsea to sit behind Reece James, whereas Gusto's young enough to push past him at one point. You know, he's got time on his side. Whereas Porro, I don't think he, is ready to play backup. I think he wants to be a first team player now.
That makes sense. That does make sense. Hopefully, for all those reasons you just said, he doesn't go to Chelsea and they do go for the Lyon guy. But like you just mentioned, the negatives. We've talked a lot about positives for the last few minutes. We've talked about his crossing ability, his pace, his physicality. He can drop into a right centre back. That sounds promising as well. Ticking all the boxes here, Alex. But what are the negatives for Pedro Porro for you?
So one thing I missed in my video actually was his injury history. It's not atrocious. He's not had ACL injuries, but he's missed quite a few games at Sporting. Things like 15 to 20 games, and it's always been like minor knocks. And I was reading what some fans were saying in a Reddit forum as well, and they said like it's quite frustrating how he's get injured a little too easy, a little injury prone. So that could be a bit of a negative because the whole point of Spurs signing him is that they don't have to deal with Emerson Royale anymore, right? That's one negative. The other thing I kind of touched on in the video is that defensively, in the 1v1, he's pretty good. He wins about 60% of his tackles, and he's got the speed to keep up with players, and he's pretty decisive with his tackles, like the timing of it. But he struggles to deal with situations where he's kind of 2v1'd and can kind of look a bit like a deer in the headlights, right? And that can be a bit of an issue if Spurs are getting counter-attacks, if he's back in time for that, like, winger and left back are overwhelming him. But I feel like that's a scenario that can be managed with Spurs playing a back five, defending a bit deeper, making sure he's not going to be 2v1'd. And it's not like a really egregious sort of part of his game. It's not like, you go 1v1 with him and he falls over. It's just something to point out. Also, something else that I didn't see as well. Just a weird fact about Pedro Porro, because I can't remember any other right back doing this, but he takes Sporting's penalties. He scored one recently. Yeah, he scored one recently. And he scored 2 last season. And that's only something I realised last week. So this guy takes penalties as well. What can't he do? But I'm not sure if he'd displacing Harry Kane, but it's a fun thing to have in your squad.
Yeah, I mean, especially like a cup game, potentially. We've struggled to sometimes have a backup. It's normally been hung with Son, who to be fair is pretty good at penalties as well. But say Kane and Son are both not playing, that's nice to have another penalty taker, right? And especially even if in cup competitions, it's always good to have players in your squad that can bury it. But Jack, what are your thoughts on the negatives? Anything concern you from what your experts said, or you got any more questions?
Yeah, I would say all I'm hearing right now is positives. And my main concern is not about Pedro Porro's negatives, is that someone's going to swoop in or the deal's not going to go through. But the reason I say this is because I think we've got such a fantastic right centre-back in Romero that he's going to be able to cover for these defensive frailties in Pedro Porro. And I think what was really interesting you said is that he can actually drop into a back three as well. And I think because of his range of passing that I've seen and you've mentioned, Alex, I think it sounds like he's going to be the perfect player. We've heard it so many times before, and I don't want to fall into the trap of getting too excited. But right now, it's all looking positive. So we just got to keep our fingers crossed that this deal does go through. And I hope, Alex, I know you're a neutral fan, but I hope this one goes through as well, because I'm sure it'll be a joy to watch in a Tottenham shirt.
Oh, absolutely. I'll get another video out of it, mate. So it'll be another few thousand views. That'd be great. But no, it is. I do kind of hope it goes through because I'd like to see him in the Premier League to kind of show off what he can do. But yeah, I think that's a good point to bring up as well. Having Romero next to him will be a very important thing. But like having someone who will be able to almost like physically match up with him, right? And I think at Sporting he's not had like a centre back of that level to play with. He's often dealt with it's genuinely being a centre of defence with Sebastian Coates, who's not the quickest of players. So that'll be actually quite an interesting dynamic to follow. It'll be interesting to see how he links up with Kulusevski as well, because I think they'll work quite nicely down the right hand side. Kulusevski is someone who seems to be a bit more like operating in the half space, which is like the area between the D of the penalty box and the edge of it, like quite an inside player. Whereas Porro, I was double checking his heat map as well. Like I was covering a few players the other day, right back for Feyenoord that's coming through. Geertruida, you might see him on Wonderkid list. He's someone who just drifts inside all the time, like a Pep Guardiola fullback. Porro is very much someone who goes on the outside. He's comfortable on the ball. He's comfortable enough to come inside, but he's very much more of a wing player. So I think Spurs will have quite a nice sort of dynamic on that right-hand side.
One thing I'm maybe a slight concern, I know I've been talking about all the positives, is that Kulusevski uses his individual brilliance so much in a Spurs shirt right now, because Emerson going forward just doesn't have the capability to really take on a man or get crosses into the box. So really just he plays the ball short, and Kulusevski drops a shoulder, gets a crossing or goes down the byline and is looking for a cross back. Do you think, because Pedro Porro is so comfortable going forward and that is his main attacking strength, that it could take away a bit of Kulusevski's quality?
No, you tell you what, that is, some people might hear that and be like, oh, whatever, but that is an interesting point to bring up. It's something I was talking about with Mudryk to Chelsea, right? One of the big things that Chelsea need to nail with that move is the fact that Mudryk is a two-way winger. He's someone who's talented on both feet, and that's unpredictable for defenders because they don't know if he's going on the outside to the byline or on the inside to cut inside. And if you have a left back like Cucurella or someone who's constantly overlapping down the left, then obviously Mudryk's going to come inside to the right-hand side, right? Like he's always going to be cutting in. It makes him far more predictable. So it will come down to Porro's intelligence, I think, more than anything, to give Kulusevski the space when needed, to give a bit of that Emerson route to say, okay, Kulusevski, do your thing, and then provide that support when needed. I think what will be the good thing is that when he does provide the support, it won't make Spurs predictable. So I feel like if Emerson's going on the right, I feel like he has improved this season, as much as I'm bashing him, but especially early in the season, I thought he was all right. But when Emerson's going on the right-hand side, defenders aren't going to treat as much as the threats as Pedro Porro going on the right-hand side. So it'll be about timing, when to support him, but I think it's a valid concern to raise.
Nice one. Guys, there's about 35 people, so pretty popular video tonight. If you do like what Alex is saying, you do like this video, please do smash a thumbs up. It's completely free to do so, and do subscribe if you're new. I know a lot of you have hopped over from Instagram from that link. And yeah, if you guys want any questions to Alex, Euro expert, then please do ask them about Pedro Porro or about Danjuma or any other signings. I do want to move on now to the next confirmed signing. This one's actually confirmed. So let's watch Alex's 3-minute video, and I hope you guys enjoy that. And yeah, we'll see you.
Spurs are about to sign Arnaut Danjuma, and here's how he fits in and his mad story. Danjuma is a 25-year-old Dutch forward who has played for Club Brugge, Bournemouth and most recently Villarreal. Now his statistics will be inflated by his penalty taking. Taking penalties isn't necessarily a bad thing, but at Spurs, Kane will be taking them, so you can kind of discount 4 of his last 12 La Liga goals. However, there's a reason Emery praises him as a player and particularly highlights how adaptable he is and how quickly he gets to learn new systems. That could also be down to his incredible background as well. First, let's talk where Danjuma has played, which has been between left wing and a striking role in Villarreal's shifting system. Now, on paper, it's always been a 4-4-2, but if you look at his heat map, it's clear he has started much wider and drove inside, quite often exploiting gaps between the centre-back and right-back and dribbling past players at speed. But he's also been noted to drop deep under Emery, to receive the balls in gaps to turn and drive towards goal. But he's not a stereotypical Timo Werner type like. Now, Danjuma represents the Netherlands, but he doesn't actually come from there. He was born in Lagos, Nigeria, and aged 4, when his parents were working in the Netherlands, they divorced, and it left him, his mother and sister homeless in a foreign country. It was at this age Danjuma says he started to play football to, in his words, keep himself out of trouble. Unfortunately, things didn't get much easier. He was put into foster care with a family who, he said, didn't take him to school or football practice, and he had to rely entirely on his dad for that. It's a rough upbringing, and it partly explains why on one hand he's hit the ground running in 4 different countries, but it could also explain why he's struggled to settle and had attitude issues at different teams. What he's done on the pitch though, woof. Danjuma describes himself as someone who's hungry for goals. He plays on the last line of defence, looking to race him behind. Now his ball striking isn't too powerful, but his shot accuracy is generally reliable, as seen by his goal against Atalanta in last year's Champions League. He also exudes confidence in the box. Taking it around the keeper isn't a typical one-off occurrence for Danjuma. The stats back this up too. Danjuma converted 16% of his shots into goals last season. The result was 7 non-penalty goals, which doesn't sound great, but 0.6 goals per 90 is much better. More impressively, these goals came from both feet, which is a trend you can see across his last 3 seasons. Also last season, he was by far top of Villarreal's squad for non-penalty expected goals per 90. This shows he gets into good goal scoring positions. He has suffered with injury issues, and it's partly why he hasn't played much this year, but I think he'll be a good fit at Spurs. Heung-min Son has scored just 4 goals in 18 starts this season in the league, and he isn't providing that direct threat in behind at the moment. He needs to push, and Danjuma is a very similar profile to Son, and will provide him that competition. Son plays badly, Danjuma starts in to fill the role of getting in behind and making runs off Kane's passes. Son plays well, Danjuma can fit in on the right hand side. Kulusevski playing well? Fine, bring Danjuma off the bench in the latter stages of games against tired defences. I think this move ranks pretty highly. In fact, I'm going to go as far as to rate it a 9 out of 10.
Wow, 9 out of 10.
Crazy.
I don't think many Spurs fans would have given it a 9 out of 10. Alex, it's time to justify, other than obviously all the stats you've read out in the video, but 9 out of 10 is the one that stood out, as well as the I just started cracking up when you went woof like that. But no, listen, what is the reason for the 9 out of 10? Why so high? Because a lot of Spurs fans in here will probably be giving it like a 6, 7, maybe an 8.
You know what? I still have a little bit in me. I've been making videos for years, and I've always a little bit in me where I think, oh, no one's actually watching the videos. And that was a big moment on Tuesday when I had a fucking an effing outpour of people going, you gave it a 9 out of 10? Oh my goodness, what are you 9 out of 10? I was like, oh my god, people really care about these ratings. I love it. I can justify it pretty cleanly, in my opinion. It's a loan move. It's not going to be an obligation. Well, I don't think it's an obligation, right? If it's going to be an obligation, it's probably going to be because certain requirements are met. Danjuma fills a very clear role in the squad, however he plays. If he doesn't play, it's probably because he's pushing Son to the limit and Son's form starts up again. If he does play, then it's because Son isn't playing well, and at least you've got someone providing competition, getting into the team, and everything has pointed to the fact that he will be able to adapt quickly to Premier League football. He's already had experience in England. He already speaks a bit of the language. I really struggle to see negatives in this. If you spent like 30 to 40 million here, then more questions should be more questions should be asked. But I don't see really any risk in this. I think this is a really sensible move.
What, Alex? What do you? I'll let Jack ask a couple of questions because he's got to jump in a couple of minutes. But what makes it? Obviously, it's not a risk in terms of loan. But what realistic chance do you think of him doing well and then being signed is?
Well, with a realistic chance, I don't know about necessarily signing because because Villarreal, he seems quite keen to move.
They're in money problems as well, aren't they, Villarreal?
A little, I think. I don't know too much on that situation, to be fair. If I'm rating how much I like the signing, a 9 out of 10, to make it permanent, I feel like a bit like a 6 to a 7, maybe. I think it's more than likely. Just can't be certain.
Okay. Jack, what questions have you got about Arnaut Danjuma?
To be fair, most of my questions have been raised in the video or when Alex was just speaking there. But one thing I wanted to ask is, would you say it's a player that Spurs have scouted for a while? It's someone they've wanted to get their hands on? Or do you think it's more of an opportunistic signing that Levy's thought, I'm going to save some money and I want to keep the Spurs fans happy, so I'm just going to buy a player? For me, I think it's a bit of both because his direct runs in behind, his one-on-one ability is really strong. But then I think for a maybe 2.5 million rumoured fee for a loan, it's kind of a win-win situation.
Yeah, I think it's also a bit of both because I'd be surprised, I'd be kind of disappointed in Spurs' scouting department if this guy wasn't on a potential shortlist of replacing Heung-min Son. Like you could see in the video, like two-footed winger who specialises in driving in behind, driving at defenders, finishing in the box. Like, come on, that is so Heung-min Son, right? But Danjuma, a lot of people questioned me after the video saying why were Villarreal so keen to let him go, or to loan him out essentially, right? If he's so good. And my answer to that is, I don't think Villarreal are working to loan him out. It's just since January 1st, Danjuma has been pushing for a move. There's been various reports. I can remember at the start of the month from Spanish outlets saying Danjuma's flown to London in order to try and push for a move. Not necessarily to a certain club, just to a club. That's why he was going to Everton, because he just wants to get to the Premier League. I think that's just the next step for his career, especially after Unai Emery left, someone he was very close with. And when Quique Setién took over at Villarreal, a former Barcelona coach, he had a horrid start. So I think it's just the circumstances aligned for Danjuma to leave, and he spent all month pushing this through.
Yeah,
Amazing.
no, That's the thing. I think the more I read into it, I think he could be a fantastic player for Spurs, especially with the horrid form Son's been. And I think it can go either two ways. And for me, they're two positives. Either Danjuma replaces Son in the starting lineup and shows the ability he has. And I think Spurs playing such a counter-attacking system that Conte plays with a high press. When we play the top teams, maybe when we play AC Milan, we've seen when we played Manchester City, they come at us with a high line, and with the ability Danjuma has, Kulusevski's creativity, and obviously a world-class striker in Harry Kane, it has all the fundamentals to be a fantastic signing. So I'm very excited. But yeah, I just hope it doesn't go wrong. But we will see, because you never know with Spurs.
But as Alex said, it's not really a risk. Like, if it's a loan, he's probably going to be a bench player. If he comes off the bench and makes an impact, amazing, and we're potentially going to sign him for depth. If he comes in and pushes Son out the team, incredible. But if he flops, we have got a couple of other wing options on the bench. So it's not like an end of the world. It's kind of quite a safe deal, which is Spurs all over, Mr. Levy, of course. But, at the end of the day, he might turn out to be a bit of a surprise. Kulusevski was a bit question marks when we signed him. So, you got to think like that. A couple of comments. Jack, do you have to go now?
I'll tell you what, I do have to go in 1 minute. But James, if you don't mind, I've got one more question for Alex. Okay, so I've got this one. It's a bit off topic. I'm hoping Danjuma's in the bag and Pedro Porro. And I want you to pretend here, Alex, you are Fabio Paratici or Daniel Levy. You've got one signing to make to improve this Tottenham team, maybe win a first trophy since 2008. Who are you signing for Tottenham, and tell me why?
Oh my God, that's a tough one.
You've been put on the spot, but I know you're the man, so...
I don't know if it's whoever to win a trophy this season, but this is the first name that came to my head to win a trophy. Albon Lafont to replace Hugo Lloris.
Okay. I need to update my knowledge because I'm not aware, but I love it.
If anyone doesn't know, keeper for Nantes, French keeper, has been a top performing one in France. To put it more bluntly, he's the guy who reached 94 potential on FIFA like 6 years ago when he made his Ligue 1 debut. One of the youngest players to make his Ligue 1 debut. He's now early 20s, 23, 24. Shot stopping's great. Fantastic kicker. Just needs to improve sort of in possession, under pressure. We haven't seen too much of that. But if you're looking for a Lloris replacement, which I think you really should be, absolutely should be, I don't think you can look much better than Lafont.
Fantastic. Well, I love to hear it. Well, Alex, thanks so much for coming on today. James, great to speak to you as always. And Spurs-related viewers, you're lucky to have this man on today. So enjoy the rest of the stream, and I will see you in the next one. Come on, you Spurs.
Jack, take it easy, mate. Thanks for joining. Alex, we'll do a few more minutes. I've got a couple more questions. And obviously the chat putting some questions. I'm just going to read out a couple of chat questions. Stephen, thanks for joining, mate. He's saying, if Danjuma does well, Villarreal have Lo Celso. What do you think on a swap?
That's a good idea, actually. Because Lo Celso's still on loan, isn't he? I think that would make perfect sense, to be honest with you.
Okay, nice. Ethan's agreeing with your 9 out of 10. He says, if we use the save funds on another more impactful player, we wouldn't have otherwise bought. That's all to do with the board. That's another video. That's to do with saving money and everything. And also, I heard on Pedro Porro, Alex, not sure how up to date you are on this, but yesterday, rather than just pay the release clause, which we're beating around the bush with, we're trying to do deals like Marcus Edwards, who we sold to Sporting. Don't give us 40% if you sell him on, just give us 20-30%. Do you really think this guy is just worth hitting the nail on the head and buying now? Because I have no idea how we haven't done it yet.
Yes, for goodness sake. Do you remember Luis Diaz when you were going in for that and then Liverpool came in and said, oh, okay, we'll just buy him? You can't.
Do I remember Luis Diaz, Bruno Fernandes, Jack Grealish? Which one that we missed out on for ridiculous money?
I don't think the competition for Porro is so high because I think quite a few, like Liverpool have got Trent Alexander-Arnold, City have got Cancelo, Sergio Gomez, United, Dalot, like Chelsea, Reece James, and they're going in for Gusto. I don't think the market for a right wing back is ultra high, but I don't think you can afford to, for lack of a better term, cock around with that deal.
This is another video in itself, Alex, and that's just to do with recruitment and why we're messing around still. I can't believe it's not done. I thought Here We Go was happening Tuesday, then Wednesday, I'm thinking Thursday, definitely. Still nothing, as far as I'm aware. So, yeah. About Danjuma, I noticed, obviously, his goal scoring has dipped. I don't think he's playing much for Villarreal at the moment. Is that right? 2 goals in 10 appearances, but I believe a lot of them off the bench. But last season, 10 goals in 23. And then obviously the season at Bournemouth where you kind of broke through 24 goal contributions in 35 games. What's the reason for this dip, or is he just second choice to another winger or something?
I think it's kind of what I hinted at before, mate. It's a bit of the circumstances. He was injured at the start of the league season with a muscle injury, so he's kept out of the squad a bit. It's worth mentioning as well, even when he had a really good campaign last year, and I cannot emphasize it enough, I think he was top 5 in all of La Liga for goals per 90. He'd only started, I think, 20, you might say that 23 games. So even then, he wasn't completely nailed on. And that's partly because Unai Emery likes to tinker with his teams. And then he only had a handful of games before Unai Emery left for Aston Villa. So I think it's a circumstances of an injury, the manager change, and always not necessarily being a starter because the way Emery likes to set up his teams and the squad that Villarreal have. In terms of the goals as well, I think this is something we should mention. His expected goals rate. So if anyone's not aware, that's the value of the average chance a player has. If someone has, an XG of 0.9, they've got a 90% chance of scoring that shot. Danjuma has always underperformed these expected goals, which meant he's not scoring the goals that the data thinks he should get. But that's true for every season apart from last year, where he overperformed by about 2 goals. Now, I said in the video, I think Danjuma's ball striking, which is like, easy definition to get that one for yourself there. How hard he hits the ball, I think could be a bit inconsistent. He doesn't seem to generate much power, but he's a very accurate finisher. And I think these are aspects that can be coached that could be coached for him. And I think if he can match up to his expected goals, start finishing on track, then that's a player who gets more goals in the minutes he has and gets more starts.
Okay, amazing. So is that a concern that he's not scoring those goals? You mentioned he overperformed last season. So he obviously did well last season. But for me, as not the complete stats man like you, I would say that means he's getting into dangerous positions. He probably should score some, and maybe his finishing isn't quite there, like you said about the ball striking. So is that something he could work on, his finishing?
Yeah, you've hit the nail right on the head. It's hard to add on to that. He can work on his finishing, but as we've touched on, he's someone who's very two-footed. I've made it a sort of a weird niche obsession of mine to have a look at players who are actually two-footed in Europe, because you look on FIFA and you go, 5-star weak foot, whatever. Those players are never actually two-footed. This is a way to burst your role. Neymar, for example, he's always renowned as someone who's talented on both feet. And if you look at statistics, he still takes about 80 to 90% of touches on his right foot. Danjuma, to score nearly 50-50 his goals from left and right foot, is a very, very unique thing. Like, I do not see that very often in all of the players I've covered over the years that have come. So he just needs to work on his actual finishing. But I think the accuracy is there, and the fact he can hit it from both feet, that's very promising for the future.
Yeah, no, 100%. You reminded me when you were saying about both feet, kind of Christian Eriksen. He was a player that could hit a ball with both feet. And there's not many players that have that ability. You look at Kulusevski, very, very one-footed player. He needs to cut in on his left, or, it's game over on his right. But yeah, that does sound promising. Couple more comments and we will wrap things up. Guys, there is still like 30, 40 of you in here. So great support tonight. Please do show your appreciation for this channel. Smash a like for Alex's time. And also if you're enjoying the videos, and subscribe if you are new, both completely free to do so and helps the channel massively. And also, before I forget, I'm going to plug his channel at the end, of course. But if you're still watching and you're loving all of Alex's videos and what he's saying, do go and follow him on Twitter and on TikTok. And Alex, you got YouTube as well you want to plug as well?
YouTube is on the hibernation, but I know there's a few people coming from Instagram. You can find me on there at Alex Barker G. You can follow me on Instagram. That hasn't gone too well on Twitter in the past. Scroll down my profile there to find out why, which is a very funny story. But I'd appreciate a follow there.
Okay, so guys, get over to his Instagram and his TikTok and his Twitter. Twitter's doing very well as well. But the TikTok videos, like we just played there, really, really good watches, guys. If you're looking to know about any player that's joining a club, not just Spurs, do check out Euro Expert. But one more question. We'll go with one more question here. It's from Exiati, very keen subscriber of SpursRelated. Good lad, this guy. He's saying, if you could pick between a new centre-back or new goalkeeper, what would you pick? And Alex, I think I know your answer here because you're saying about Lloris, you're saying about Lafont as a replacement, but Spurs are in desperate need for a centre-back. We've got washed players like Eric Dyer, Davinson Sanchez, as you know. What would you prefer Spurs go for? What do you think needs improving more?
Oh, that is tough because I'd say left centre. I'd say like the three hardest profiles to get on the transfer market at the moment are left back, left centre back, and goalkeeper. I think the markets of those are very, very difficult, and right wing as well. And this is kind of emphasised right by recent transfer business. Mark Cucurella went to Chelsea for like 60 million euros or 60 million pounds. Sorry, Anthony went to Manchester United for 80 odd million pounds. And goalkeepers, I think I really struggle to think of many. Like I like Albon Lafont, but I think the top quality youngish goalkeeper around at the moment is Mike Maignan at AC Milan, and he's not going absolutely anywhere. So when you're telling me to pick between centre back and a goalkeeper, it's a very, very hard market. I think I would be inclined still to go for goalkeeper because I think there's only a handful of them. I think Lafont is that one of them, or maybe the one that Spurs should go for. Once they're snapped up, like it's all you're done out. Who else are you going to get? Whereas left centre backs, or left-footed centre backs and centre backs in general, they do come on along a little bit more often.
What I was going to ask about Lafont, and that was great what you just said. What I was going to ask about Lafont, because I don't know too much about him. I know he was that potential FIFA player. I did see that, but like I don't sit there watching. Is it non? Is he paid for?
Yeah.
So what sort of price would his release clause be? Because like you said, he's still quite young.
No, Not have never sold a player for more than £25 million, I believe. So he wouldn't have a release clause in there. Fun fact: only Spanish clubs are required to have a release clause in their contract. So on the player's contract, yeah. So other teams, it's not normal practice. Only for like young players. I don't think Lafont's got a release clause. I really doubt they not would sell him for more than £30 million. So and he'd sort a goalkeeping position out for whichever club he signs, likely for the next decade. If you want an emergency option, by the way, nab Alphonse Areola out of West Ham, because if we're talking stats, he's consistently put up like shot stopping numbers that are amongst like the elite goalkeepers in Europe. He's just been very unlucky to be at bloody PSG when they've had Keylor Navas in there and Buffon, Real Madrid when they've had Courtois, and then PSG, Real Madrid. Then he's gone to West Ham when David Moyes is in love with Fabianski, and each year feels like he's last, but he keeps performing. Areola one day, I still predict this will be like a top quality keeper. He just needs that game time. So if Spurs went for an emergency option, he's still 29. Go for him.
Yeah, very good shout. Finn's agreeing with you on this one as well. So very good shout. And like you said, he seems to be second string. Obviously, did you say he's at Fulham at the moment? Isn't it? He's second string.
He's West Ham.
West Ham. So he's second string to Fabianski. And it's a bit like was it Keylor Navas was second string at PSG for a while, and then he was. I can't remember where he's gone now, but it's like a player like that that's a very, very good goalkeeper. You know he's a good goalkeeper because he's been at a top club like Real Madrid, just wasting on the bench. I mean, Areola's maybe not as good as Navas, but it's that kind of thing of, wow, you've got a good second keeper on the bench here that could be our first keeper. Let's be honest. Like, it's kind of crazy to think. But yeah, very, very good shout indeed. Guys, that is all we have time for with the Euro Expert. If you have enjoyed this video, like I said, please do check him out. Alex, where can the people find you? There's still 30 of you in here. Please, at least 5 or 6 of you, go over and follow Alex on these socials, he's about to say, and we'll put them in the description as well, mate.
Oh, thanks for having me on, man. It's been a pleasure. You can find me at EuroExpert on all social media platforms, and you'll see the ginger animated cartoon face pop up, and that'll be me.
There you go. You can't miss it at all. Guys, I will put it in the description of this video if you are watching offline. But if you're watching online live now, this video is about to end. So smash a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new, and then hop over to Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok and follow this guy. He's incredible work, puts a lot of effort into his videos, and he is growing day by day. So please do go help him out. Thanks to everyone in the chat that did follow today and supported the channel and asked some very, very good questions to Alex as well. We kept him on his toes tonight, that's for sure. And yeah, guys, we will be back very soon with more Spurs content. I'm sure the drama will continue with Pedro Porro and other players. And yeah, guys, all the best. And Alex won't say this, but Jack normally would. But come on, you Spurs!